Good evening. It's the end of July 2023. We're at the tail end of Season 5, and every month we round up the top most upvoted questions on the OverwatchUniversity subreddit, and I answer them my way. Hit the intro. Okay, the first question, the most upvoted question of the month of July 2023 was how to deal with an aggressive Reinhardt as a tank. I'm not sure if this is like when you're a support and your Ryan is super aggressive or you mean the enemy. So let me read this thread a little bit. Hey guys, I'm a Diamond 3 tank main, and I've been getting a lot of aggressive Reinhardts in my games lately. You know, those that won't stop furiously swinging their hammer in a horizontal axis no matter what happens. Can someone tell me how to counter those bastards? So this is against an enemy aggressive Reinhardt. So this is from a tank perspective, how to deal with an enemy Rein tank. Well, the ego answer is to out-Rein the enemy Rein, take the duel. But in all seriousness, you can play heroes that generally do pretty well in that specific matchup. I would say Orisa is a pretty good matchup into Reinhardt, and so is Ramatra. Ramatra punches, Rein keeps his shield up, he loses that out. And arguably, this is a bit more, not really a hot take, but it's like a different strategy. You kind of just ignore him and you play stuff like Winston. With this proper composition around it, maybe another dive DPS like a Tracer or Sombra, or someone who can follow up with your jumps into their backline. Then you bubble off their supports and you ignore the Reinhardt. Rein is a hero that is pretty dependent on resources. If a Rein charges in with no backup at all and just goes super aggressive, you can focus and kill him. So one thing you can do is Winston jump past him. As Orisa, you can actually just tank him straight up. Whenever he's about to go for a charge, you pop your Fortify, you spin him out, you spear him back, and you can actually just tank and DPS him. If you guys get equal resources, Orisa generally does win. And the other option was Ramatra that I mentioned. Like you said, you punch him. And also, if you're in Omnic form, put up your shield behind the Reinhardt so you cut off line of sight of a lot of the support resources that the enemy Rein is getting, and then just punch him to death. Be careful of sitting there with block because he can charge and shatter you pretty easily. Still use natural cover. Don't turn off your brain in this matchup, but that is the best way to deal with Reinhardt from a tank's perspective. To elaborate on this question a little bit more for everybody else listening, as a DPS, top 2, maybe Pharah Echo. Like, what can Rein do? Rein's biggest weakness is range, right? And high ground in areas that he can't reach. That's why nobody plays Reinhardt on Watchpoint with Gibraltar unless they have a Symmetra or some sort of strategy to get him up to the high ground. If you just stand and look down at him, what can he do against hit scans that are out of his effective hammer and swing and fire strike range, right? Nothing. So play ranged. And as a support, same thing. Play from a distance, pick Zenyatta, keep a Discord orb on him, and play out of effective range, and that's it. Next question, how do you get Awkward's playstyle to work in Bronze? So for those who don't know, Awkward's pretty popular in the subreddit. He's a content creator that has been blowing up in the recent months because he is a top player. He's like, you know, top 10, hit rank 1 multiple times on multiple support heroes, and he's always been teaching people to do something called damage. That is a little bit not deceiving, but a lot of people are taking that as like literal, like only do damage as Ana, only do Kiriko. That's not actually what he means. That's like the surface level, but if you like dig a layer deeper, he's basically just trying to like reorient people's brains to prioritize applying pressure. Damage is one of the best ways to apply pressure to enemies. If 4 enemies are able to just look straight at you and like, you know, deal damage and like give resources to their team, there's not enough pressure applied to it. So you, instead of, you know, sitting there like a defensive heal bot Ana, if you just shoot the Pharah once, shoot the enemy Ana once, or throw a nade in their backline or something like that, it forces them to have to retreat and play behind cover. When they back up and go into cover and duck away, you're relieving pressure for your team. You don't have to heal as much because there's less damage incoming because you simply dealt damage to them. So keep your teammates alive. Like that is like important, but there's a bigger importance to apply pressure to the enemy and look for an off angle, open up an angle, and deal damage to the enemy to apply that pressure when appropriate, and put a higher priority on that. I also did get coaching. I'm a top 500 player. I've hit rank 16, but I had a session with him. A, for content, and B, to see if I can learn something new, because he's hit rank 1. There's a difference between I've peaked pretty high, but like I'm usually on the lower end of top 500, right? The rank 300 to 500 versus like always hitting rank 1 like this guy. So there's like a little bit more of an edge that I can still refine and fine tune. So I actually have a video on this channel where I got coaching from him. It's like an hour-long session, 3 games. Definitely watch game 2. Let's put it up on the screen and linked in the description.
But you sometimes cap yourself because you decide to go for a more defensive approach rather than an offensive approach. Like for example, you do use your nade, right? Pretty loosely, I would say, but the sleep you almost never use.
Actually, that's a good observation. I think you can see what I mean by applying pressure there. Did Blizzard change something to ranked at the start of season 4? I'm gonna be honest, I don't really pay attention to the matchmaker. I don't look at people's profiles anymore. All it does is tilt. I just play the game, and if I lose, I just, I just focus on myself. I'm pretty sure this is gonna be something about teammates or maybe deranking because of X, Y, Z. I just focus on my own play and let it take care of itself. I haven't noticed anything personally. I'm still around the same rank as I have been over the past like 6 years of playing this game. Sometimes you have to ride the waves. There's gonna be losing streaks. You have to ride the good with the bad, right? What is this? Let me just glance quickly. Overwatch 1, I was high Masters with 20 seasons. Caesars 1 to 3, Masters and GM. My MMR should not be in question. I'm hard stuck Masters for years. Okay. But now in season 4 and 5, I'm abysmally stuck in Diamond 4 and 5. What's going on? Meanwhile, people are saying hard stuck Overwatch 1 golds or GM 1. Nah, this is just hearsay. That is a pretty tough D rank, but that's not impossible, even if you're hard stuck for years. I went on a losing streak. I D ranked from GM1 to like, or top 500 GM1 to like GM3. Not as big of a deviation, but people like are pretty inconsistent in this game, and you can't be too one-dimensional for too long. I'm sure this player will get it back soon. Is caring about your endorsement ranking just a fool's errand? I would say yes. I don't know a single person that actually cares about endorsement rank around my social circle. That being said, maybe some people do like try to look for endorsement level 4 or 5, but I'm gonna be honest, myself and other content creators, other streamers, we usually just ignore the endorsement. It doesn't really matter to us at all. So don't worry so much about that. What am I supposed to do as a DPS against a Mercy Pocket? Now, this is a complaint where a lot of DPS's damaged players will be like, it's so annoying playing against another damage that's getting, a DPS is getting pocketed by a Mercy. It's whatever. They use a lot of words like brain dead and stupid, and that's why Mercy is like OP and stupid and blah, 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 blah. You have to think about it this way. This is a 2v1. If you're an Ashe without a pocket fighting an Ashe in a Mercy pocket, you're fighting 2 people at once. You're fighting an Ashe that has an instant like 60 or 55 HP healing per second and a damage boost the whole time. You're not supposed to just like straight up take this 1v5 unless they're 1v2, excuse me, if they're not paying attention. What you do against a DPS that's getting a Mercy pocket is you ignore them. You actually shoot other targets that are like, there's 2 people sent there on an angle. You have to ignore them and fight the other people, the other support, the other DPS, pressure the other tank, apply pressure in a different way. Maybe it forces that Mercy to peel off their DPS and go heal. And then when you have that opportunity, you can shoot them. There are times you can kill a Mercy pocketed DPS if they're like a Widow Hanzo and you're playing a one-shot hero like Hanzo Widow and you just snipe them. Or if you're playing Ashe, you can still 2-tap them if they're not paying attention. You're on an angle where they're not looking. You don't just take them, like if they're looking at you, both of them, the Mercy pocket with the DPS and you're the other DPS, don't challenge them in a straight up head-on 1v1. That is like playing to a huge disadvantage. You can still win like 1 out of 4 times, but like 3 out of 4 times they're gonna win against you. They just have the numbers advantage. So what are you doing? How do you play against Zarya? Number 1 is tracking her bubbles, right? Her bubble is her entire identity and building it up, getting energy, and then ripping people apart and having that bubble as a defensive utility. She has 2 bubbles on a 10-second cooldown in between. I think it used to be 11 seconds, or it got nerfed to 12. Now it's back to 11. It used to be 10 when she was super OP. It really is just tracking a bubble. When you get 1 bubble down, that's something to keep in mind. You can try to apply pressure to her to force a second one, and once she's 2 bubbles out, you have to just, you either go in there and you have like a 5-second window before like you can before probably her 3rd bubble comes back, because after the first one's 2 seconds, then there's some time in between before she spams the second one. It's probably about there's a short on and off cycle with her, and that's the biggest thing. In terms of hero matchups, Winston is a very popular pick against Zarya. Winston is notoriously good because you jump over her, you go for the backline, ignore the Zarya. The bubble acts as a wedge in between the supports for the Zarya, so they can't pocket the Zarya and keep her up, and then the bubble is super annoying for her to laser down. She runs out of ammo if she lasers it down too much. Winston can just stop zapping Zarya at any point, so she doesn't build any energy off the Winston specifically. And Zarya's weakness is also range. Her beam has like a limit. Your secondary fire is a small arcing projectile. You can play flyers like Echo, Pharah, and they'll do pretty well. You can play snipers across the map, and she really has no answer in those specific matchups. Okay, dealing with tank frustration and toxicity. Doesn't feel like a question, so I'm gonna have to open this. I've come back to the game after a while. I've been a tank mate since Overwatch 1, even in Overwatch 2, but I find the role frustrating due to being the single tank. That's understandable. The most difficult part is dealing with toxicity from my team, especially when it's simply not justified. Those who experienced similar experience, how did you deal with the mental challenges? This one's, how can I improve my mental? This one's a tough one to answer because everyone deals with stress in different ways. I understand and I can sympathize with players, because back then when you had the two tanks in Overwatch 1, you'd have the other tank to pick up the slack and support you, right? Your off tank to hold space while the main tank takes space, as an example. And tanks are usually the first one to blame because it's a single role. When there's a tank differential between your tank versus the enemy tank, it's very obvious and it makes the game very hard to win if the tank is seriously outclassed instead of evened out. So one of the best ways is for me, that's why I don't play the role. I'm gonna be honest with you. If it's, you play video games to have fun. If it's just unjustified and unfun when people blame you all the time and you're playing a role that's very very thankless, play a different role. That's why I play support. I'm usually the last one to be blamed, thank God, but I do get blamed sometimes. I'm actually gonna read the top comment. I'm not knowing what to do because everybody does deal with stress a little differently. My advice is play a different role if you're not having fun with it. This person's just like verifying their feelings. You haven't found a tank. People who haven't played it really don't get it. It is a difficult role. I agree with this. They think they know how. That being said, I haven't found tank any more mentally challenged than the other roles. Interesting. When people get tilted, they'll complain about everyone and everything. It's usually just the worst person on the team whining. So I'm just gonna laugh and feel sorry. If it still bothers you, know their toxicity comes from a place of incompetence and emotional immaturity. And then all you do is mute and avoid and learn how to play Hammond. I always have fun with Hammond no matter how much bullshit's going on. Plus it's more fun. This is true. Emotional regularity and immaturity. People don't know how to regulate their emotions and they like to blame other people for their losses. It is an indicator of that for sure when they just blame instead of just saying GG and moving on. That's what I do. Even if someone's underperforming, I don't even feel the need to bring it up. I don't say it to them. Who cares, right? At the end of the day, I know it's competitive, but it's still a video game. I'm not gonna make someone feel worse for just like playing bad. It's like going to play pickup basketball and like telling the worst person at the gym, like, your shot sucks. Like, why? You're just playing there for fun. It's a competitive scrimmage. You play for fun, but like at the end of the day, you go home, you have other things to worry about after you play pickup basketball with people. At the end of the day, when you log off Overwatch, go worry about your work, your job, your school, your taxes, your finances. There's other things to be stressed about. I'm basically just, frustration, toxicity is just, there's no place for it. You have to mute, avoid, and play something else. Single player games, like fighting games. I play a lot of Street Fighter 6 lately. I'm an E-Honda main, don't judge me. Then there's no one to blame but yourself. Playing the correct way but still losing the teams playing incorrectly. Okay, I'm not gonna open this question. I'm gonna decipher it based on the title. What you think is the correct way may only be correct if all the pieces are together, like Exodia. Like as Winston, if you jump into an out of position Zenyatta, you might not have the entire rotation or time to kill DPS on the zaps to fully kill the Zen before he gets help. And if there's nobody following up with you, you don't have time to get out. It may look like it's correct, but it's not, because not everyone's on the same page. And you're gonna lose to teams playing incorrectly simply because they have like extra people with them. There's a quote from another old Overwatch 1 content creator, Jane, a good friend of mine, miss him. He used to say, like, when one person makes a bad decision, it's like you're feeding. But if all 5 of them are doing the bad decision together, it's a strategy. If 5 people just commit and play together, even if the decision is suboptimal or incorrect in theory, simply because there's 5 people doing it and there's only 2 people doing the correct thing on the other team, but the other 3 are uncoordinated, you can simply just outmaneuver them and outplay them in that capacity. That's my initial thought on this question. Let me see what this guy's been saying. This guy's been listening to guides and advice from much better players, implementing character strategies, positioning tips from top 500 streamers. I've been noticing a lot of players who play suboptimally without regard to the strategies, but still beat me using all these higher level tips. It's frustrating because I'm trying to correct my mistakes and bad habits, but see the enemy just do these mistakes and bad habits that everyone would advise against, but they somehow still win. Gold 1 lobby. So this is generally around a gold player. So a lot of the strategies you can't completely mimic or echo a top 500 streamer because they're doing The strategy that they're doing only works because this player is in this spot and clearing this angle, so I'm able to stand here as Ana simply because my Tracer is playing there and controlling that space. So it's optimal there, but it may not be optimal in gold. It's less about mimicking and trying to understand and trying to mimic the correct play at a different level and understanding why and what can work at your level relative to the skill and relative to where everyone's playing, where all the pieces are. Let me read the top comment. Oh, see, look, the quote from Jane. One person doing something wrong is a mistake. A team doing collectively something wrong is a strategy. A team playing suboptimally but cohesively will beat out a team where individuals may play more optimally individual but not as well together. It's true. It's a team game. I guess that just answered that question, right? A few more. When someone leaves a game, does that count as a loss and make you derank? When someone leaves a game, it doesn't count as a loss yet. You can still win a 4v5. It's possible, but very hard. But there's a timer before they can rejoin. If they simply do not rejoin, you are allowed to leave and it will still count as a loss, but like you can just queue up again. You won't be penalized. If you leave early, you get a leaver penalty and it still counts as a loss. So if someone leaves the game, you just wait for the timer to finish and then you can leave to queue up, or you can just wait out the entire timer. No matter what, it's always going to be a loss. It's unfortunate. That's just the way it is, or else the system will get abused. If there's a way to like mitigate or minimize leaver penalty, it gets a little hairy because some people do. It's like, okay, I need you to leave, so we're about to lose this game, so I get less. It becomes a problem. Leavers are very unfortunate. They do happen, but they're generally not as frequent as people believe. I know people are going to say otherwise, but I think that's something called confirmation bias. I might be mistaken on that one. Don't quote me on that. Where you always remember the times they leave, but not the times that the enemy team leaves. Mathematically speaking, I'm pretty sure as long as you're not like a chronic leaver in the 5v5, if you're not the chronic leaver, there's 4 people on your team and you're solo queuing, there's a chance that 1 in 4 chance that someone on your team is a leaver, and a 1 in 5 chance that the enemy team has a leaver. You'll always remember the times your team has a leaver, but you always conveniently don't remember the times that you got a free win because somebody on the enemy team has a leaver. So it balances out. It's annoying when it happens, don't get me wrong, but that's my take on it. My aim has literally disappeared. Skill issue, consistency. That's okay. It'll come back. When new and learning, is the recommendation to turn off chat to keep morale more beneficial than keeping it on so I don't miss something important for the game? This is a bit subjective and dependent on the rank you play. I'm going to be honest, there are players, top level players who never join voice chat and they can just play individually and they just win. Not even the top players, like at any rank it happens, but I'm just trying to give an example that even in the highest levels, it's fine. That being said, if I were personally playing, I do prefer people being in chat. They don't have to speak, but they can listen to my comms. At least they can listen to pings. Pings has been a godsend where like, you just ping what you plan on doing. If I have a nano boost and my Genji's not in voice, I look at him, I press the button, my nano boost is ready. And then usually they say okay or acknowledge. People who generally are off chat, at least in the higher levels, they actually acknowledge and they use the system built in. They just don't want to talk to people. I get it. There's anxiety. People just want to focus. But if you're new and learning, I think it's totally fine. There's so many factors to learn in Overwatch. I think you can turn off chat. That might be a hot take. People can be like, "Oh my God, KarQ, you're telling people to not be in comms. You're a new player. Like gold and under generally doesn't matter as much as people think. There's a difference between mattering over the long run for you individually versus it being important for the game. There will be times it's important, but I do think like if you can get better in other aspects, like you can find when it's appropriate for you to not get too distracted, because a lot of people do find it a bit distracting. There's also like people who have oversensory issues where it's just too much going on for them. So yeah, this is dependent on the person more than anything. If a DPS is really bad, should I still heal and revive them? Yes and no. Generally speaking, you want the highest chance to win the game. If one of your DPS is actually just like outclassed by far, you're better off sending your resources, heal, revive as a mercy or as another support into someone else who is making more impact in the game. Doesn't mean you ditch them. You can help them when it's convenient, but don't go out of your way to fly to them if they're already mispositioned. Because if they're really bad and they're out of position in their back line and they're about to die, like don't sacrifice your life for them. That is something I always recommend. Play for yourself. You can be a bit more selfish as a support. If you're a Mercy player, obviously you can't be as selfish. You have to find the right person. That's part of like learning with Mercy, because they're talking about heal and revive. I assume they talk about Mercy. I play a lot of Ana, Bap, Kiriko. I just play for myself and I play selfishly. And if it's convenient, great, I'll help them. If not, I focus on what matters more, which is converting kills and healing the right people. What are some reliable and or creative ways to deal with a Ram ult as a team? If you don't have any speed like Lucio to team disengage, you just need someone to boop them back. That's why a lot of Roadhog used to be pretty good against Ram. You just blast them back with Whole Hog. You separate them with the shield. As a Reinhardt, you just keep your shield up and let it time out. I guess other creative ways is to like bait him into like a Junkrat trap and then boop him away, or honestly just boop him away right away. All you need is some separation. Obviously, if he's on a point and fighting and you can't like stay away from him because he's on the objective and you need to be on the objective, it is just a shield or some sort of barrier, or you just have to like recognize you don't have those shields and barriers and focus them down. It's a little harder, I think, in the lower ranks. I think Ram ult is really, really annoying in the lower ranks, but at least in the high levels, people do understand what the condition is. If Ram has his ult and you popped it at a point where you don't have a shield, everybody knows focus him now, or else we're all just gonna die. Or we use somebody like a Lucio has enough of a boop to create some separation, go around some natural cover and let it time out. Does watching GM gameplay actually make you a better player? Depends on what you mean by watching, and it depends on the streamer too. I would say if you watch me, I would like to say that a lot of players have gotten a lot better watching my support gameplay, but it depends how you watch, right? There's people who actually watch, and you have to watch and think about why they're doing what they're doing instead of just like blindly watching them and seeing, you know, their cool mechanics, and you try to emulate everything you do. If you emulate everything to it as best as you can, it's not going to work because you don't understand like the reasoning behind anything. So it just depends on how you watch it. You have to think why they're doing it. I repeated myself 6 times for that. What DPS is best for applying shield pressure on tanks? There actually used to be a guy who like made a graph on like general DPS onto shield pressure on tanks. People always used to think it was like Junkrat and I think it was like Hanzo, but that's actually a misconception. I actually think heroes like Soldier do a bit more shield pressure simply because there's reload time to consider for Junkrat. 1, 2, 4, 5, and then you have to sit and reload. Maybe you don't want to waste a mine generally on the shield. It's kind of slow, and Hanzo takes a long time to charge up his full bow to release. I think Soldier actually does like what, 19 times 30 for a full rotation with a short helix rocket. I actually think Soldier is pretty good. Bastion's an easy answer as well, and one underrated one is Echo. When the shield is cracked, like the cracked animation that you see on it, like a Rhine shield or a Sigma shield or a Ram shield, the Echo beam does do 4x damage on that, because Echo's beam is an execution. If enemies are half health or under 50% health or under, it'll do 4 times more damage. The same applies for a shield. That being said, you generally don't want to waste it on a shield, but there are like very niche situations where it is a correct play. So that's something to think about. Is it normal for supports to not play something that can heal flyers? No. Not at the higher level, at least. If you have an Echo, you need an Ana, or Echo or Pharah. You either have a Mercy with it, or you either play a combination of either Ana, Brig, or Zenyatta. If you're running Bap Lucio, it is very rare to play the flyers. I think some maps you can get away with Echo with Bap Lucio, but Bap has an arcing heal that's inconsistent with flyers. Lucio's not good with that. If you have a Lucio Moira, it's also not good with flyers, right? What's Moira gonna do if you can't like reach your P in the sky? You can't throw a healing orb in the sky, it doesn't bounce. There's like very minimal value by doing that. So that's why a lot of players play Ana. You can look up and heal one of them. Mercy, of course, with the pocket. Brig can throw health packs at them, and Zenyatta keeps an orb on them. And those are the most common ones, most popular ones at the highest level. You will almost never see what I explained earlier with like Moira Lucio, Bap Lucio with like a Pharah, for example. Sometimes with Echo, like I said, but like only on like one map where the skybox is really low. All right, last question. How to actually play Pharah against hitscan. This is just, you just have to play natural cover as Pharah. A lot of people think you can just, because you have a pocket or as a Mercy or whatever, you can just fly into the open airspace. That is incorrect. The best Pharah players jiggle between like cover. They bounce back and forth. It's a rocket that literally goes in a straight line. So you jiggle, it folds, and then you concussive in when you know they can't turn around and go for you, when you have the right timing for a positional advantage. You don't just fly aimlessly against, you know, double hit scan Soldier, Ashe or something. Play natural cover. If it's just one hit scan, you can go straight into them. Like I've seen some good Pharahs with a pocket. Remember, if you're a pocketed Pharah, you're 2 versus 1 against a solo Ashe. If you can get over her head and then just drop 2 rockets on her, she's probably dead before she can bounce back and do enough damage to you. So that's just something to consider. Depends on the matchup. If you have 1 hit scan, 2 hit scans, even 3 with like the supports, and play natural cover. That's the secret. And that's a couple of the top questions of the month. We don't want to let this video go for too long, but hopefully you enjoyed listening to my my rambling and my answers, and I'll see you next month. Peace.